sunshine. My Umi said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My Umi said, shine your light on the world.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm really pleased to actually be able to do this. As many of you know, my third book, Cultivating the Genius of Black Children, came out last February. And for those of you who haven't seen the book, it looks like this. And for those of you who don't know, I've told everybody about 12 times, this child is my grandchild. So I encourage people, as we do our work with children, carry around with you, have on your desk, have on your wall, a picture of a child that you absolutely love. Because in your work, what you want to do is do work that will keep the child you love smiling and happy, and you want other people to do work that will keep your child smiling and happy. Right now, I started focusing on cultivating the genius of Black children because in my work with early childhood educators and with people in K-8, like all educators of all grade levels, I'd go into classrooms and everybody's talking about cultural competency and cultural relevancy and cultural responsiveness. And with most of the teachers that I work with, they would look at me, if I uttered those words, take a look at the 12 different language groups and 15 different ethnic groups that were sitting in the room, have no idea where to start, and just keep doing what they always did because they don't know where to start. Most of our preparation programs don't really prepare us to work with the children that are actually going to be sitting in the room when you walk in. And those textbook children, I'm not sure where they are, but they are not in our classrooms. So I would tell teachers, if you don't know where to start with just one. Just pick one. And many of the teachers would say, oh, well, I don't think it's a good idea to just start with one, to just pick one. Is that favoritism? Is it going to make it worse for the other kids? Well, if you don't start somewhere, you can't get anywhere. So start with one. And the best one to start with is the culture that you know most about. So I wrote a book about cultivating the genius of Black children because I know most about Black children, Black culture, Black adult-child interaction patterns. So start with what you do know. And then you can get that down, get a template going, and then you can move on from there. We just had our Black Child Development Institute conference May the 21st, I think it was, and the theme I kept hearing over and over and over again, making a difference. I want to make a difference. Let's make a difference. If you want to make a difference, you have to do something different. It's not going to happen if you don't do something different. So by the end of the night tonight, everybody should have something that they're going to do different. And I'm not just talking about what we do in our classrooms. You know, when I wrote Learning to Lead, it was with the premise that all of us are leaders. And I talk to people every day, and every day somebody will tell me, oh, I'm not a leader. I like to be behind the scenes. I like to be in the background, or I like to implement other people's good ideas. Well, my response to that is any 3-year-old is pretty sure that anybody over the age of about 12 is a leader. Any 3-year-old knows that any grown-up probably can accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish. Most children believe that all they have to do is just get grown. And once they get grown, they will be able to do all the things that they want to do. So for any of us over the age of about 12 to say, oh, I'm really not a leader, really does a disservice to children's faith in our ability to actually do something. So we can all do something different, and we can all make a difference. So this book, I worked at, I was the dean of a little teacher education program. It is warm in here, isn't it? A little teacher education program, Pacific Oaks College Northwest. And in that program, we prepared people for early childhood and K-8 education. And our focus there during that time was really getting teachers to focus on working with children of color, working with children learning English, and working with children from low-income communities. I'm going to have to step away for a moment because I have to get my fan. In doing that, what we did was we focused on the research. What does the research say about those populations? What does it say about what works effectively with them? What does it say about what are their learning preferences? What does it say about strategies that have proven to be effective? And so I decided I would start there with this research for this book. I went back and started looking at research, historical research, like going back even to Frederick Douglass and the Talented Tenth, but going way back. And what have we been saying for 100 years are the learning preferences, the learning styles, the cultural expectations of Black children, and what would work best in a classroom. So I looked at those learning styles, multiple intelligences, learning preferences, and then looked at what shows up most in Black children and in Black culture. So, and what would an early childhood through third grade classroom look like if it implemented some of those things? I have a disclaimer in my book. I say it every time I do a session on this. Everything in my book does relate to Black children. However, it does not apply to every single Black child you will meet. And it does not only work for Black children. So I need people to make sure that they keep that in mind, that these are just generalities, but that's what we have in education anyways. We have some basic generalities that in general, these kinds of things work for large groups of children. So I looked at what works best for Black children. Many of you might be familiar with learning styles and multiple intelligences. I'm going to run through them very briefly for those of you who may not have had an opportunity to really engage those. So that's on the second page of your handout that I gave you. And I put them in alphabetical order. And the reason I put them in alphabetical order is because often there are only one or two that we really focus on. And because we only focus on one or two of them, then those tend to get the most attention. So by putting them in alphabetical order, I figure everybody's got an equal chance to be on the top or on the bottom. So there are the auditory learners. And learning styles, this is really just about what makes information stick for you. What makes you take it in and retain it the best. We all do all these things to varying degrees. But there will be a couple of them that work more for you or work better for you than others might. So the auditory learners are the listeners, and they're the ones that learn through hearing. And lecture works really well for them because it goes in and it stays. I'm not an auditory learner. It goes in one ear and out the other. I have a daughter who is an auditory learner. She doesn't understand how something can go into your ear, therefore directly to your brain, and escape. And it's like, well, for me, it just doesn't work like that. So the listeners do very well in taking in information auditorily. There are the experiential tactile learners. Those are the mover-doers, and they're the ones that have to experience things. Things don't happen. They aren't real unless they've actually experienced it. And my primary example I use is when my younger son was about 2 years old, and all of us have said this at one point to some child, don't touch the iron, it's hot. And what does the boy do? He touches the iron. Ouch! That's hot. Yes, it's hot. But for him, it wasn't hot until he actually touched it. He had to experience hot. Me telling him hot, showing him hot, spelling hot, signing hot, none of that stuff was going to work. Hot was when you touch it and it's hot. So experiential tactile learners, they need to actually engage the thing. They can't just have it be abstract. The interactive learners are the talkers. They learn best by talking about stuff with other people. They want to take the conversation, they want to engage it. They're the ones that after the movie want to go out and get coffee and spend another 2 hours reviewing everything that happened in the movie. Discussion. They like a lot of discussion. The opposite of them, I'm going to skip over one, are the reflective processors. The reflective learners. They're the processors. When they come out of the movie, they do not want to talk with you about it. They want to go home. They want to think about it. They want to dwell on it. They want to revisit some scenes and some phrases. Tomorrow they can talk with you about it, but not right away. They need to think about it. They want to reflect on it. The observational learners are the lookers. They're the ones that will stand back and watch someone else do it. Then they will go somewhere by themselves and they will practice. My example for that is when the new dance comes out, they will not be on the dance floor learning how to do it in front of the whole dance floor. They're going to go home and practice that in front of a mirror for a while. And when you see their effort, it's going to be their best effort to date. Doesn't mean they won't refine it, but they're going to look. So pushing that child up to the front of the room to make them go and do something isn't necessarily going to be how they're going to do best. They're not going to be learning in that process. They'll learn best by watching other people do it. And then there are the visual learners. The visual learners can be visual picture, visual word, visual people. Visual picture, they like charts, they like graphs, they like mind maps, they like images. Images tell them things. Visual word, that would be me. I need the words. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but I want my 1,000 words. I need to be able to read it. And if I read it, I can remember it, which means if it's a lecture, I got to write everything down so that I can go back and read it. There's also visual people. Visual people are people who learn. They're not the observational learners, like the people who watch people do stuff. They watch people, not just what the people are doing. The observational learners are the ones who are watching the process, looking to see how it's done. Like my mother, like you crochet. If she's going to crochet something, she needs to just see you do it. And if she sees you do it, then she can do it. But the visual people, they read people. They understand people. They get a lot of information from people. And so for them, it's really the relationship that has more to do with the learning style. Multiple intelligences is what we're good at. And we're all good at all this stuff. So whenever I hear people say, you know, I'm no good at math. Well, you can do more math than a 2-year-old. So yes, you are good at math. We all are intelligent, like I said, in all of these areas, but the ones that show up most in learning environments are linguistic, verbal, and then logical, mathematical. That's what we test for, that's what we measure, that's what we make assessments regarding giftedness and all that stuff on. And I'm going to go through these very quickly, and then we're going to get to the really good stuff. So there are the bodily kinesthetic people. That intelligence, they're the people who know their body. So you can think of dancers like Michael Jackson. You can think of athletes. You can think of people in theater and the arts. You can even think of like a surgeon or just anybody who really understands how the body works, and they can make the body do things because they can actually isolate muscles and do stuff. I can barely do a cartwheel. I don't understand how you get upside down. So that one's definitely not mine. However, I could try to do a cartwheel, which is why I said most of us can do some of these things. Interpersonal, that's I know you. People with interpersonal intelligence know people. Not just watch people and learn from people, but they're really good at walking into a room where maybe they don't know anybody and feeling very comfortable striking up a conversation, feel comfortable joining a group, feel comfortable going places where they won't know anybody at all, to other countries, because they're really gifted at creating those relationships with other people. Intrapersonal, I know me. Those are the people who spend a lot of time with themselves, and most of us don't spend nearly enough time with ourselves. They know who they are, they know how they tend to respond, they know what their values are, they're very clear on that. They spend time thinking about themselves, and I don't mean that in a narcissistic way, I mean that in a, I understand how I work, how I navigate, how I interact with others, how I'm likely to respond in a variety of different situations. Those people who don't have good interpersonal skills are always shocked by how they react sometimes to things in public. And they didn't really mean to do that. And they'll say things like, oh, I just don't know what got into me. Well, you got into you. And you just need to know who's in you so that when you get in situations like that, you kind of have a clue of what might happen and you can like self-moderate. There are the linguistic verbal intelligences. That means I know words. It's people who maybe read early, people who have a really extensive vocabulary, people who may be good at other languages. But words, that's where they can really shine. Logical mathematical is I know sequence and patterns. It's not just about being good at math or doing math in your head. Patterns are really an interesting thing, and those of us in education, when we teach children about patterns, like duck, duck, goose, and what comes next? Another duck. So when you think about patterns, children are learning patterns all the time, but some of them take a long time, a very long time. When you think about annual patterns, when you think about galaxy kinds of patterns, things that happen once every 5 years, it's going to be a long time before that's going to come around again. But people with logical mathematical intelligence start to pick up on patterns sooner than others. They start to pay attention to that. They start to pay attention to how things are sequenced. That's why they may be good at math, because math really is about sequencing and patterns. Musical and rhythmic intelligence is not just being able to sing really well and just being able to play the piano really well. This is also about patterns, but it's also about harmony. It's about beats. People with musical and rhythmic intelligence are really good at seeing how different things come together. I've never understood how somebody could sit and write a symphony. How do you write music for all those different parts? And they come together and they work so well together. And I love listening to it, but I don't know how you do that. Actually, I do know how you do it, but it would take me forever to do that. People with musical and rhythmic intelligence can do it a lot quicker, and they can also pick up on beats and rhythms a lot quicker. The naturalists, their intelligence is they know how they're connected, not just connected to other people in terms of relationships, but that human beings on a molecular level are connected. They know how they're connected to the animal world. They know how they're connected to the plant world. They know how they're connected to the earth and the environment. They know how they're connected to space and outer space. And it could also include spiritual connection. They are connected, and they understand that it's not just about them and their own soul little existence. Spatial visual is I know space and form. And all of us, like I said, have that to some degree. I know for many women, whether you are really good at that or not, when it comes to the dishwasher, you're like a perfectionist, because I go and I look in the dishwasher and it's like, but there are 4 cups and 3 plates, and I know it can fit. I know if we just rearrange this, it can fit. Well, that's it. But it's true. It's like, I'm not running the dishwasher without this last cup. It's going to go somewhere. But that's also knowing space and form. And it's also knowing what to do with the space that they're in. Like if you want certain activities to happen, people with good spatial visual kinds of intelligence can look at a space, figure out how it needs to be set up in order for it to accomplish the things that it needs to accomplish. For my learning style, one is visual and one is interactive. Like I said, I need the 1,000 words, but I also need to talk about it and I need to discuss it. Because for me, I know more about a topic if I hear what you think about it. What did you get out of what the teacher said? What did you think that chapter meant? And then when you tell me what you thought, then that helps me to also just rethink what I'm thinking. And that's how I learn. That's not very much valued in our educational environments for young children. We often don't let them talk. School classrooms, no matter what age the children, even with infants, this is what I hear all day long. And when you go into a classroom, just listen. Shh, 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 all day long. At some point, children stop listening to that noise because it must be the wind. It just becomes background. But we don't let children talk. So the interactive learners, they lose out on that one. When it comes to the multiple intelligences, what do you do when you have free time, and what do you get in trouble for? It is no surprise to people who know me, I got in trouble for 2 things. I got in trouble for talking to people, And that's what I did in my free time. I also got in trouble, believe it or not, but it's true, for reading. I got in trouble in school starting in kindergarten for reading because I wasn't reading what the other kids were reading. I was too far ahead of the class and the teacher wanted me to stay on page 52 where everybody else was. And I longed and finished that book and moved on to another book. So in my free time, what did I do? I read. I got in trouble in school so much for reading that I figured out by about the 3rd grade that if I read the dictionary and the encyclopedia, nobody ever took those away from me. What are you reading? Oh, I'm just looking up a word. Okay. So I read the dictionary. I read encyclopedias. When you think about your own multiple intelligences, what you got in trouble for and what you did in your free time often can be very good clues to what is just a natural gift and talent for you. And also think about what might have happened for you had that been a central feature in your classrooms growing up. What if what you were really good at was a central feature of a classroom? Your educational experience would have been very, very different. So, after looking at all that stuff and reading the research on what works well for Black children, many Black children, not all Black children, not only Black children, disclaimer once again, I then compiled a list of the learning styles and learning preferences of children of African descent. So when I go through, we just talked about the learning styles and multiple intelligences, and in general, African American children tend to be tactile kinesthetic. They learn more through moving and doing, engaging and touching. They also tend to be visual, seeing, observing, reading body language. They're very highly skilled. A lot of Black people are very highly skilled at reading body language and facial expressions. And for many of us, while words are coming out of somebody's mouth, we're watching their facial expressions to see if those things line up, to see if they match. And if they don't match, we'll continue to listen, but we've already made our decisions about the validity of those words. Verbal. We are often a verbal people. And what I mean by that is not just talking, but like very expressive language and playing with language. I have on here discussion, metaphor, and hyperbole. We definitely like to play around with words. We've done that an awful lot, and we do it in more than one language because Black people across the planet speak more than one language. And as it turns out, even for people of African descent who speak other languages, there's a lot of wordplay. And for those of you who are familiar with some of them, we are very, very adept at making something mean the opposite of what it usually means. We're very good at that. If something is cool, that means it's hot. And if something is hot, you better be cool. So we just take words and just make it mean something else. And we make up words. And we don't mind making up words. But then the way I look at it is that, a lot of English is a lot of made up stuff. So we just throw our share into the pot. But we are a verbal people. And we are also a collaborative people. And I don't have competition on here because I'm going to talk about mental and physical challenge later. But we like working collectively. We like working in a group. We like joint work for a common cause. We enjoy that. We also like competition, which is why team sports can often be very, very popular because there's a lot of collaboration within the team, but then there's competition between teams. So we tend to like that. We tend to be very much relationship based. So that means really getting to know a person. We are generally not the people who are going to come in and just get right down to business because we don't just do business with anybody. We do business with people we know a little bit about. So what happens for children is they will be all in your business. Are you married? You got a boyfriend? You have any pets? Where do you get your food? Where do you sleep? You have any sisters? What's your mama's name? They're going to ask you all kinds of questions that are quite personal. And so if you're standing there trying to teach, and just perform the act of teaching, that's going to make learning very difficult because Black children learn best from people that they have a relationship with. And a lot of that's built on trust. And many of us understand that as grown-ups. If you just started a new job and someone is supposed to train you to be an expert at your new job and you don't trust that person, you know that there's a dilemma there. You want to, I got a feeling about this person. I need to just get to know that person a little bit more before I just go do whatever that person told me to do. So relationship-based for Black children, they're going to try to establish that. So if they love nothing more than seeing you walking your dog down the street or running into you in the grocery store, because those are things that humanize you and make you a real person. They like realism, no rhetorical questions, no questions that you know the answer to, and no pretend questions. So if you do not have time to hear what that little girl did over the weekend, do not ask her, because she will not see it as a rhetorical question. How was your weekend, Deborah? Oh, it was great. You know, my mama picked me up at 3. And then we went and we got my cousin. And I'm going to go on and on and on and on, all the way, better hope it's not a 3-day weekend, all the way up to when I got dropped off at school. So when you ask a Black child a rhetorical question, they're going to give you an answer. Also, no questions that you know the answer to. So asking a Black child, like if you're in a classroom and you say to the 3-year-olds, can anybody tell me what time it is? The other children may be sitting there trying to figure out what time it is. The Black child is like, she knows I don't know what time it is. She knows I don't know how to tell time. And she knows how to tell time. So I'm not sure why she's asking me what time it is. So I think I'm just going to sit here and be quiet because it's got to be a trick question. And then no questions that you know the answer to, that goes along with questions that you don't want an answer to. Are you ready to go to bed? Some people think that's being polite. The Black child thinks you are asking a question. And they will give you their very honest answer. No. Now you have to regroup and figure out what you're going to do. And all the kid is thinking is, if I have to go lay down, why didn't you just tell me that? Just tell me that. Why are you asking me? Or pretend questions like, would you like to wear your red pajamas to bed or your blue pajamas to bed? I don't want to go to bed. So you have to think, when you're working with Black children, things that are much more sort of direct and to the point. And I don't even mean that in a rude way. You can say, honey, it's time to go to bed now. But if asking, nah, it's not a good idea. They like a mental challenge. They like critical analysis, critique, and authentic why questions. That's what some people see as challenges. It's like, well, what if that's not true, what you said, teacher? What if it's this? Because they want to critique it, they want to discuss it, they want to debate it. But it's often seen as a challenge. They like a physical challenge, using your body in all kinds of ways. Dance, sports, drama, sign language. And when it comes to a physical challenge, especially with young children, and especially with boys, and this happens for boys of just about any background, it can't be done the easy way. How many of you were at the BCDI conference? Were you in my session where I talked about my grandson? Okay, so I have to give you a demonstration. He's 4 now. If he is standing here and you want him to come over there, what you're expecting is going to happen is this. That is not my grandson. My grandson is going to do this. Easy is boring. Where's the challenge in that? Anybody, he knows, anybody can walk from that chair to that chair. But it takes some skill to get creative about how you get there. And he wants to show me, like I said, a physical challenge. He wants to show me what he can do. So if nothing else, he's going to jump around. He'll he'll go all around Seattle to go across the street. Why? Because it's a challenge and it's fun. So Black children tend to like a mental challenge and a physical challenge, and that's where the competition comes in. We also like creative expression. Singing, dancing, rapping, instruments, drawing, sculpture, drama, writing. We're going to express ourselves and in many ways try to establish our individuality. It can be how we walk. It could be how we dress. It could be how we do certain body language, how we talk with our body all the time. We're going to be expressive. That's how jazz got created, and that's one of my favorite kinds of examples of creative expression. What happened for a lot of Black musicians, and it didn't just happen like by accident, I mean, it's just kind of a given. Anybody with enough time and a degree of talent can learn to replicate the notes on the music sheet exactly as the original person did it. Anybody can, given some time and energy and practice and dedication. And you need some skill too, but you can replicate it. So, y'all replicate all the music that's on the sheets in front of you, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to embellish and decorate, and I'm going to weave in and weave out. And then someone would say, but I can't play that. Well, of course you can. That's not your decoration, that's my decoration. But you won't be able to repeat that tomorrow. Probably not, because I ain't going to feel the same way tomorrow. It's going to be different. So, creative expression, we will color outside the lines. We will make the thing a color unknown to the human eye. We're going to decorate it. We're going to do something different with it. We're going to use it in a new and unique kind of way that no one's done it before. Because that's what we like to do. Because just like anybody can walk from one chair to the next chair, anybody could stay in the lines, but it takes some skill and talent to get creatively outside of those lines. Spirituality. This isn't just about religion, it's about that connectedness again. It's about that relationship. It's about this, there's a sense of a higher power, there's a sense of being connected, there's a sense of wanting to do something that's for a good cause. And you'll find that a lot in Black culture. And it can also be very much related to religion. But there's just a lot of spirituality and a lot of connectedness. So with Black children, they want to help. They want to do the food drive. They want to participate in something like, bringing the food baskets to the elderly and all that kind of stuff. They want to do all that kind of stuff because that gives them an inner sense of, again, being connected and being part of a relationship of some kind. Black children need opportunities for role models of African descent. And I always reiterate, not just those who have passed away only in February. We have to get beyond that because we focus on that a lot. There are a lot of role models for Black children, and they need to see that because otherwise, some young children may be left with the impression that I don't want to grow up to be a role model because they're all dead. There are some that are alive, and they don't have to be like Barack Obama. They don't have to be so far out of reach of a child. There are, some of you may be familiar with a National African American Parent Involvement Day. We had over 200 Black men who came to South Shore School to greet the children in the morning, and it made the front page of the newspaper, and it was tweeted all around the country, and they ended up getting a grant, I think, from some organization in Detroit. So it was a big deal, but that's 200 role models that our children need to know about. They need to know that there are people alive and well walking around on the streets of Seattle every day, not just February, doing some really good things. We need to expand African American children's perspective of people of African descent. For a lot of black children, especially young ones, they're really unaware of how global African people are. They're unaware of the fact that there are black people on on every continent on the planet. Some were there against their will originally, but many of them went there of their own volition, got into ships and sailed to places. So black people are all over the world, and black children need to know that, which gets to the next one, that they need to see themselves as Pan-African. They need to see themselves as connected to more than just the black children who are in their classrooms or who's in their neighborhood, but that black people are a larger group of people and that we are everywhere.
Sometimes I don't want to be bothered. Sometimes I just want a quiet life. Me and my baby, me and my lady. Sometimes I don't want to get into no war.